When Steel Talks,
When
everybody
Steel Talks, I'm very
listens.
pleased to have the opportunity to sit down and chat for the first time with Mr. Pepe Francis from the UK, United Kingdom. You are the director of Ebony Steel Band Trust and also the chairman of BAS, which is the British Association of Steel Bands. We would just like to get to know you better and share that knowledge, of course, with the global steel band community. So welcome to When Steel Talks, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us while you're here in New York. We should say, of course, that the Panorama was last weekend, and this, I suppose, is one of the main reasons for your presence here at this point in time. So, welcome to When Steel Talks, Pepe.
Thank you.
Okay, let's learn all about Pepe. I mean, tell us about yourself initially.
Right. Initially, I'm from Trinidad. I grew up in Trinidad. My parents are from Grenada, and I've lived in Trinidad most till I was 18 years old. I went to school in Trinidad, and then I left Trinidad just before my 18th birthday and went to London. And as I arrived in London, I went straight into the armed forces. I was in the army. I was a soldier. But in between, while I was there, I met up with members of a small little steel band that they had in Acton. And so I used to be in touch, back and forth in touch with them whenever I was stationed in the UK. I would visit them. And whenever I was stationed abroad, whenever I come back, I would join. I would come and take part. And we used to have a mass band. One of the first bands to bring costumes in Notting Hill. And we started from there. And then when I left the army fully, I left the army because I wanted to be more involved with running the band, because by then I was running the band.
What was the name of the band?
Ebony Steel Band.
So it was Ebony at that point, okay.
It wasn't Ebony to start with, it had another name for the guys who originally started it, but it became Ebony. Yeah. So I then took over as the chairman of Ebony. When I took over, I was still playing mass. I was making costumes, wearing costumes.
So you're also a mask man, mask maker?
Not mask maker,
Or
a
just
mask
mask
man.
man, okay.
Yeah, I had people like Arthur Peters and them used to build costumes for me. I used to be the king of the bands. And for a number of years I was doing both roles, running the band and playing king as well. And after about 7 years, I came to a point where so the members in the steel band were saying to me, well, you know, we need you more time with the band and running the band and getting the band on the road and ready for Panorama, etc. So I then gave up the mass side and concentrated on the steel band, developing progressive Ebony Steel Band. And in between doing that, I was also involved with the Notting Hill Carnival. And the organization that started off when Leslie Palmer was involved, was running it. And the various committees of Notting Hill Carnival, I served either as the representatives for the BS or the steel bands, or on the committee as an advisor in some form or way. And then after when the Clare Holder days, I gave up being involved with the carnival organizing side of it per se, because we'd seen nearly 9 or 10 committees come and go, and everyone ended up in some kind of problems or debts or whatever.
Challenges, yeah.
So it started to get a bit disheartening, to say the least. So I just concentrated on Ebony Steel Band and the Steel Band movement, which is BAS. But before BAS became BAS, we used to be the London Brotherhood of Steel, which just had London bands as a membership.
London Brotherhood of Steel?
Yeah, that was the original name for the British Association of Steel Band. And then when we was applying for funding to be able to do other things and put on things like our annual awards and stuff like that, the Arts Council said, well, if we only representing London, we can't get any funding. So we had to go nationwide.
National.
So we then became the British Association of Steel Bands. And we've been that ever since, and we've developed. We now cover, we have about 75 bands on our membership books, plus a number of individual soloists, bands, etc. And we have affiliations with most of Europe. I travel fairly regular to France, Switzerland, for meetings with other steel band associations. In fact, what we did was, during the era of Steel Band European, we encouraged other countries to form their own steel band association. Some of which didn't last long, but some of it, like the one in Switzerland, still has its.
That's Punch, right? Punch.
No, Punch was a band. No, Punch was a band just formed for the festival, but was made up of different steel bands from Switzerland.
Okay.
But now those steel bands, back in their own right, Punch doesn't exist. They have their own steel band. They have a steel band association.
Okay.
Martin Gra intends to head that. But yeah, I mean, Switzerland's got loads of steel bands. So then we more or less tied up with pan culture in Germany. So we do a lot of exchange with them. And there's another band, there's a couple of bands in France. Calypso Association is one that we work very closely with. In fact, I went to visit them a few weeks ago. I'm hoping that we will go there for their 20th anniversary in October. We'll go there as their guest and do a performance out there for them. That's Ebony.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I then just concentrated on building Ebony and getting us to, our first thing when I first took over was to win a panorama, because we hadn't won any in years. So, and we finally won our first one in '83. And then since then we've won 19. So,
the winningest band in the UK.
Huh?
The winningest band in the
Yeah.
UK. Yes.
Yeah, and we've won every European festival that has taken part so far. So, although they haven't been a European festival for a few years, which we're also trying to revamp and get restarted. I work very closely with Pancho Mego. I keep in very close contact with Keith Diaz and the executive of Pancho Mego. In fact, Keith was in London for Notting Hill. And he's due back next week because there's a big carnival conference at one of the universities next week, Wednesday I think it is, which quite a few people is coming over to attend. I know Keith will be coming back to represent NCC at that. So,
okay, National Carnival Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do that, and I make it a point of going down for the annual general meeting. I pretend not to miss that. It's one of the highlights of my year. There.
You mean the one that's held in Trinidad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where although the election was never
When Steel Talks.
I went down especially for that. I go down for that especially because it's very interesting to see what happens in the elections and what changes will ever take place. But at the moment,
But you maintain a close relationship with Pancho Baker generally.
Yeah.
Throughout the years.
Yeah.
You mentioned the networking within Europe. Is there any outreach, or has there been any affiliation with the bands in the Caribbean? Not the bands, rather, the associations, like the Antigua and Barbuda Steel Band Association, or the...
No,
anybody else?
We've had meetings in Trinidad. This year, after Panorama, after Carnival this year, there was a meeting held at Fozata Panyard, where we invited representatives from all the Caribbean islands. And we met there and had a long discussion, because one of the things that's common to most steel bands in the Caribbean, that very common to us in the UK and in Europe, obviously, is funding, finances, etc. So we all facing the dilemma of losing Panorama because of the money not being available to put it on, the money not being available to the bands. I mean, we've been in Panorama in London now for 10 years without any appearance fees, any prize
that was
money.
interesting.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so, but when we had the meeting, I mean, Grenada, St. Vincent, the guy from St. Lucia, he was not sure they were going to have a Panorama this year. And we all have the same cry that, you know, there's the funding for steel bands outside of Trinidad and Tobago is not there. It's nil and void. So, and it's how do we overcome that? How do we come together to make that impact that people will sit up and take notice? Even getting the sponsors to take notice of it and fund it is not easy.
So this was the first outreach in terms of, should I say, the first collaboration between BAS and the Caribbean Steel Band Association.
Yeah, that was the first one that was held. That was actually only happened because we got Nesta Sullivan managed to put it together. And we had that meeting, and Pantrabago sent a representative along to it. But it wasn't one of the first I've been to where you had so many, because it was straight after Carnival and a lot of the
Caribbean people were still there. Okay. Now, you mentioned funding. How has the Panorama and essentially the steel band art form in the UK fared over the last decade or two, given the challenges of, you know, coming to Panorama, not having the financial support that's needed? The steel orchestras need to get there, they pay their tuners. I know there's fundraising, but still, there's always a challenge.
What has happened over the years, in the early days, even in my time when I was running, I was actually the director for Nottingham Carnival, and I did that for 5 years. I was the coordinator. I used to be able to put on events and do things to get funding. So we would have always had an appearance fee or some kind of prize, this or whatever. But over the years, that seemed to have dwindled away, and nobody's been coming forward with it. And because of so many different committees have come and gone, I think both the funding bodies and the companies who were sponsored sort of lost faith in putting or getting involved in it. You know, and at one time, Nottingham Carnival used to have a lot of negativity behind it in terms of the news media would only look for the crime element, etc.
Kind of like sometimes what happens here in the Parkway.
Yeah. So we literally had gone from 12 bands in the Panorama down to 6 because bands can't afford it. I mean, it cost me, for my band, for Ebony, to take part in Panorama and Nottingham Carnival on the road. It's a minimum of £20,000 to £25,000, which is a lot of money to find, you know. And I mean, this year my players had to sacrifice. We had to, you know, whatever gigs we did went towards that, but it is what the bands, the players, and them look forward to, and it's what they want to do. A lot of bands can't afford to do it, but they do it because it's what the bands want. The players look forward to that every year.
It's the lifeblood of the art form.
That's right. Yeah. Because we tried one year. We said we was going to boycott it. No Panorama. This was at a BS meeting. We had the meeting, and by the time I got back to Tabernacle, where Mangrove Vineyard is, they was all up in arms. And they said, well, if there's no Panorama, they ain't practicing no more. So, you know, we had to very quickly try and turn that around and have a Panorama that year. So
the bigger picture
yes.
cannot be seen sometimes. Yeah.
So it is hard work. You know, my time here has been thinking how and which way to go. In fact, I plan to go up to see Thomas.
Mr. Bailey?
Mr. Bailey, sometime either to do this afternoon or tomorrow. I will chat with them as well, because I mean, although you hear Americans talking and crying about money, but they seem to have a lot more sponsors. When I look on that back wall, on the back of that stage, I'm thinking we don't have not even 1/5 of that in terms of, you know, people. I mean, even now, I'm going back on to Notting Hill Carnival. I'm a trustee of Notting Hill Carnival now. I've been there the last 2 years. I've gone back when although I was so blind, I will never get involved with the organizing of Notting Hill Carnival, but they dragged me back in because last year there was going to be no carnival unless the 5 arenas came together and to put it on. So the heads of the 5 arenas is what formed the company to put it on. So we're now stuck with it there now in terms of organizing it.
Okay.
And even that and all is another headache because, you know, we got a new company, we got trustees, we got representatives from the different arenas, but not everybody gets along with everybody.
Yeah,
you know,
disparate personalities.
And there's a lot of personalities
Well,
and ego trips,
yes,
you know.
yes.
Which
Human fear.
for me, I find is such a nonsense because I've been there, done it, seen it. So, you know, I've been in Canada for 50 years, so I'm thinking, why? But, you know, a lot of people who's there now are new to Carnival, you know.
How did you first, get involved personally with Pan? In terms of, was it back in Trinidad, how
Well,
how old were you?
I was playing Pan since I was 8 years old.
Oh, okay, so let's talk
I
about
grew up
that.
in Mova, and I grew up on
okay.
I grew up and I come out from Ebonites.
Oh,
So myself and Owen Surratt and all of
okay.
them, we grew up together in the band.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't solo until I left Trinidad. So, well, it wasn't solo, it was Ebonites. Solo was formed when I left it.
So
When I went back, I still stay with solo.
So your first awareness of Pan was with Ebonites?
Yeah.
When you were growing up, you heard them playing and so
Well, we used to have to run away at night about practice.
well, yeah, back in the day.
Yeah. My father didn't know I was playing Pan until he saw me one Christmas morning with the Pan round neck.
How old were you then? About
10.
What is your favorite voice of instrument? Or do you like them all in terms of your tenor, bass, your?
Well, when I was a young man, I did like tenor, but to me the modern day tenor is too complicated. I couldn't play it, so I prefer the bass.
Okay.
But
when is the last time you played?
oh God,
Do you miss it?
no, I ain't got the time. I really hasn't got the time, and too many things to do. My head isn't there for Pan anymore. I mean, I still there. If my players are playing nonsense, I can tell them they're playing nonsense. And, I still have the ear for it, but actually pick up a pair of sticks and play Pan. I tried it one carnival about 10 years ago. Play one tune on the road, and that was that. And then I find that you don't have the time to be on the truck because you always need it on the ground. Somebody wants tell me that is sort of things you have.
Yeah.
So I tend to stay on the ground now.
Okay. What did you like, if anything, about Pan in New York?
The main thing I like about Pan in New York, well, I mean, apart from the panorama, which was the panorama, over the years I've been coming to it and I've seen some controversial results, but I like the way that the band sizes are. The amount of people, young people that they have in their bands. And that really has impressed me, the way that whole panorama thing is put on and, reminds me of Trinidad. But the main thing I come to New York for is the Juve.
That was going to be the next question. Juve, right?
That is what instigated me to start Juve in London.
Oh.
I saw this steel band only on Empire and I thought this is ideal. And from the next year I went back to London and I fought with the Metropolitan Police to get it, and now for the past 7 years we've had it, but we only can get from 6 to 9:30.
But it's still, something, yeah. So only steel bands on the road.
Yeah, only steel band and rhythm, but that's it.
Okay, this is interesting.
Because that is like a joy to me.
So what challenges do you see in terms of, besides the funding and the disparate personalities, what do you think faces Pan overall in the various communities with their challenges? We have New York, we have Trinidad still has challenges, we still have bands with issues. Of course, we still have the Caribbean communities, besides the various, the things that we can see right there. Any other things that come to mind that you have noticed in all your years?
Now, I think, to be very honest with you, I think Pan is in a healthy state. as far as the young people is concerned. I mean, I look at my band alone, and I'm now looking at my junior band, which just won Junior Panorama in London this year, coming up, which is like 18 and under, and I've got a youth band which is 18 and upwards. And when I see the amount of young people still coming through in the band, I feel very confident about it. My problem, and I suppose it would be the problem for everybody, is how do you keep them, and where is the resources coming from to keep developing that, and it always comes back to finances and money. So it's how do I convince certain authorities that they need to put money into these different elements to maintain that for the good of the culture, but also for the good of the country and the whole, because violent crime among the young is very prevalent, not just in Trinidad and Jamaica, but in London and other countries, and growing. So it's one way of preventing a lot of it.
Okay. What do you think of the introduction of synthesizers into the panorama?
Nothing to it. Nothing to it at all. I don't think he introduced it in that. I mean, Duvon does that everywhere he goes. He takes that E-pan with him everywhere he goes. Yeah. I think he's publicizing it. It's a soloist pan. It's not a pan as such.
Which is how you said synthesizer.
Yeah, it's a glorified synthesizer. But the E-pan man, the guy from Canada, has been pushing it for the past few years. And I went to the UE when it was first being developed under Brian Copeland.
Oh, the Phi.
Yeah. Okay. And he brought it to London to demonstrate as well. So I've had a long history behind it. I don't like I like it as a pan, and I don't like the G-pan either. Because I think the G-pan is a waste of a lot of metal, too heavy, too bulky for the average band having to travel anywhere. So I'm not really a fan of it. But any of those things. I believe in traditional pan.
Okay, so you think believing in traditional pan, quote unquote, I think that means that you would not be too pleased to have, like a section of people playing the E-pan saying like, okay, we don't have enough instruments, so we have the E-pan where we can elicit the pan sounds.
No, I don't mind it playing in a little group.
No, I'm talking
small
about panorama.
ensemble. No,
not a panorama.
No,
okay.
Not at all.
That's interesting. In 2011, you received an MBE, which is the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, and that was honors for your services in steel pan in the United Kingdom. Talk about that. How you felt. And has it served not only yourself, but has it helped your challenges that you face on the UK pan scene in any manner?
Well, before I even get to that, I mean, one of the first award I got from the Queen was the Queen's Award, which was this thing here, was given to us, and we were the first black organization in England to receive that.
When was this?
I think it was in 2000.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
2008, I think it was, something like that. I think that is what led to me getting the MBE.
In 2011, okay.
So and that was because we did a lot of it, because Ebony is not just a steel band, it's an institution. I keep saying that to people.
Steel Band Trust.
So we didn't, the trust part is the charity half of it.
Okay.
But we didn't just do pan, we did lots of, we had a Millennium Volunteer Scheme where we had volunteers, young volunteers who comes in, and we used to take them out on weekends to do gardening for old people's places and all sorts of different things. So they didn't just do pan. Pan was just part of what they did. So, and we ran that project for about 10 years successfully until the funding for it ran out. So we got that that Queen's Award for that. And then I suppose that led to me getting the MBE. So having the MBE, I think, it has its purposes my children can now get married in St. Paul's Cathedral and things like that. But
in terms of pan,
I don't know if it's done that much for us. Those of us who've had it, who've received it. There's Sterling, he's got one. Russ Henderson, Gerald Forsyth, they've all got one. So, in my case, I tend to have it. I'm called on more with it because of where I am and the different things I'm involved in. So it helps in that sense because it's a title and it allows me to speak on different
and table concerns and issues.
Yeah.
So what are your recommendations overall for not only, I mean, if you had the correct platform and more or less even, I should say, the areas of those who you think could make a difference, what would be your recommendations for Steel Band overall, beginning in the UK?
Well, my recommendation, when I'm going back to a meeting and when I get back to my membership, is that the bands of themselves has got to get up and be more self-sufficient and organize themselves better. They can't sit and wait on the organization to fund what they have to do. The same way we have to go to look for funding ourselves. Every man has to learn to do that. Might not be easy and it's nothing, and we could probably help and advise on that. But at the moment, I think that's one of the key backs of it, is that bands are sitting there and thinking, well, the organization should be doing this or doing that, and it doesn't work that way. And also, I think bands has to start to diversify in what they do, to be able to raise funds and to be able to become self-sufficient. You have to do other things besides.
So they have to become full business organizations.
That's right. Yeah,
so work toward that at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do. I do Ebony Steel Bar as a full-time job. Okay. It's like morning and evening, right through the day into the night, and still until practice finishes. And we have different classes every day of the week.
It is a business. What is the approximate size of the band that goes to Panorama, Ebony?
We only limited to 75.
Okay.
It used to be 100, and then the other bands protested about that and brought in this 75 limit because we used to be too big and they couldn't compete with that, etc. So
no comment.
We had an advantage.
No comment as we move along. Recently, an Atlanta-based Trinidadian, he's an economist, but also he is first and foremost a pan man, Professor Ajanu Niomba. He put together a concert in Trinidad and found that there were trials in terms of getting even people to attend. But more interestingly, one time he said he was trying to get people interested, get tickets sold, and he bumped into a young lady, and of course this is in Trinidad, the emphasis on the young lady, and she said to him if she ever became Prime Minister, that she would ban the steel band because it's just too much noise. Well, what are your thoughts on that, given, if I want to use an analogy, that one would not expect to hear a young woman or a young person in Scotland, for instance, get up one day and say,
ban the bagpipes.
I want to ban the bagpipes, which is a national instrument. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I find that's a ridiculous statement to make. I mean, anybody born in Trinidad, growing up in Trinidad, they didn't have to be born in Trinidad, but born anywhere in the Caribbean, and would suggest about banning steel band. I think that's, I don't think that's been thought of or really serious about that.
But it's interesting because we don't expect to hear someone in, again, Scotland say that. What do you think is lacking in Trinidad and Tobago that someone is comfortable even making that type of statement publicly? What's lacking in Trinidad and Tobago? There's lots of things lacking in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, I know even with my band in Trinidad solo, when we were practicing on the Eastern Main Road, the people opposite used to phone and complain. They used to call the police, they used to call every guy, and wrote letters to the government, all that. Yeah. So it's not totally accepted. And this is recently, because that's Pan Nights. Yeah, that's what it was, Pan Nights. Yeah. So it's, but I have that in England.
to, you know. I mean, you have it here. I mean,
But
here
it's not
even-
declared the national instrument in England. It is
Well,
declared the so-called national instrument in Trinidad.
in Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah.
that's why, you know, and it is a national instrument, and how can you ban it? And I think that statement was flippant, quite honest.
Interesting. Any other matters you would like to touch on that you think deserves tabling?
I think what I wanted to talk, I'm hoping that maybe keep myself, I'm going to fall into there this week to talk about. I think the situation with the steel bands practicing in New York really needs to be addressed, because, you know, I fly all the way from London, I get here, when I get in there and go to Apanya at 9 o'clock at night, at 9:30 the police are closing it down. I think that's I think that needs addressing, and somehow the authorities needs to be approached on behalf of the steel bands, to be able to allow them to practice, you know, until 11 or whatever it is, you know, the time, a reasonable time. But I think 9:30 to be shutting down bands here is one of the big problems. And
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the 9:30 because Sonata Steel Officer did meet with the requisite authorities, and they did get their permits to be practicing until 11, yet they were shut down.
I know, I was there at night.
Even though with the permits they would show it to the same police, and they would still be shut down. So it seems this meeting with the authorities and having permits and going by the book still isn't working.
Well, I think it has to go to the higher authority,
Yeah.
because it just isn't done. I mean, we have the same problem in London, but if I have to practice out on the street, which I only do one night before Friday, before Panorama, I have to get a license. But if my license is still 9:30, it's still 9:30, and then sometimes I even push it until 10. But and that's reasonable as far as I'm concerned, based on the amount of houses that we are practicing within. But in terms of the panyards, nobody can tell me what time I can finish practice. You know, it's up to me and how I police my players when they're leaving the building. That's where. But I think that's one of the things I would like to see addressed in terms of the pan, because it affects the development of pan.
All right. Well, Mr. Francis, it was very good actually being able to sit down and speak with you, because over the years we've met, we said hi, and we have really, you know, found that it's necessary to have this discourse and share your thoughts, your experiences overall, what, you know, your rolling steel band has been over 50 years now. I mean, it's important to hear about that firsthand, and you know, and to say thank you on behalf of the entire steel band community for your service and what you continue to do, and of course, especially your concerns are not only limited to the UK, but your outreach to the rest of Europe. Your meeting last year with Caribbean heads of associations and potential heads, and of course your concern now for the dilemma being faced by some steel orchestras in New York for the shutting down of the patio practices, even with permits. I mean, you're not limited to your little pocket, and that quality, I'm sure you know, is quite rare. You're involved across the board, so thank you very much. And it has been a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
When steel talks, everybody listens.